Shafilea Ahmed was a 17-year-old British-Pakistani girl living in Warrington, England. She was bright, ambitious, and loved by her close friends and teachers. Known for her intelligence and artistic talent, Shafilea dreamed of attending university and pursuing a life beyond the restrictions imposed by her strict family. She was a typical teenager in many ways, loved hanging out with her friends, performed well in school, and had aspiration to build an independent life for herself. But her life was overshadowed by something many people could not see. Shafilea lived under extreme pressure at home. Her parents, originally from Pakistan, held very traditional views about marriage, gender roles, and family honor. They expected obedience without question and often reacted harshly to anything they saw as disrespect or rebellion. Shafilea struggled silently, torn between respecting her family and pursuing her own dreams. Her friends noticed subtle signs of distress. Sometimes, she would appear withdrawn or anxious, particularly after weekends spent at home. Teachers observed that she occasionally seemed tired and distracted, as if carrying a burden too heavy for someone her age. Although Shafilea never openly spoke about the dangers she faced, she confided in a close friend that she feared her parents' reaction if she refused to follow certain strict cultural expectations, especially regarding marriage. In 1999, when Shafilea was 17, tensions at home escalated dramatically. She had met a boy she liked at school and openly expressed that she did not want an arranged marriage, which was against her parents' wishes. Her parents perceived this as a direct challenge to their authority and the honor of the family. Over time, their warnings and punishments became more severe. Shafilea was often locked in her room, denied contact with friends, and verbally threatened. The young girl lived in constant fear, knowing that her independence was seen as defiance. Despite these pressures, Shafilea remained resilient. She continued her studies and tried to maintain a normal life outside her home. Teachers described her as polite, hardworking, and respectful. Friends described her as kind-hearted and full of potential. But her safety at home was deteriorating rapidly, and the tension between Shafilea's dreams and her parents' strict rules was reaching a dangerous peak. In the summer of 2003, after leaving school, Shafilea expressed her desire to attend university and move away from home. She had applied to colleges and was planning to start a new chapter in her life. However, her parents' control over her had not diminished. Arguments about marriage and independence intensified. They pressured her to accept an arranged marriage and threatened severe consequences if she refused. Shafilea tried to reason with them, but their mindset was rigid and unforgiving. Tragically, this ongoing conflict set the stage for an unimaginable outcome. In September 2003, Shafilea failed to return home after a routine school day. Her absence was noticed by neighbors and relatives, and soon, authorities were involved. Her family claimed she had run away, but police investigations began to uncover troubling signs. Witnesses recalled seeing her parents display unusual behavior, agitation, evasiveness, and attempts to mislead neighbors and authorities about Shafilea's whereabouts. The initial investigation faced difficulties because cultural sensitivities and family claims complicated the case. Authorities were cautious, but evidence slowly emerged suggesting foul play. Friends recalled overhearing arguments and threats within the home, painting a picture of escalating tension and danger. Teachers and neighbors described a young woman living under fear, pressured by family expectations that had grown into coercion and threats of violence. As the days turned into weeks, hope for Shafilea's safety diminished. Police discovered evidence that pointed toward the involvement of her parents. The young girl's life had been stolen not by a stranger or a random act of violence, but by the very people who were supposed to protect her. The tragic reality of honor-based violence, a term rarely spoken about openly at the time, began to emerge. Shafilea's case highlighted a horrifying truth. Sometimes, the danger is not from outside the home, but comes from those closest to you. Shafilea's disappearance shocked the local community and later the entire country. Media outlets began reporting on her story, raising awareness of the issue of forced marriages and honor-based violence. Her friends, teachers, and advocates campaigned relentlessly to ensure her story was not forgotten. They hoped that justice would not only be served for Shafilea but that her case would prevent similar tragedies in the future. By 2004, Shafilea Ahmed's case had become a central focus of law enforcement. Investigators collected evidence, interviewed witnesses, and gradually built a case against her parents. The details that emerged were horrifying threats, abuse, and a carefully planned act to silence her dreams and take her life. This first part of Shafilea's story is a chilling reminder of the consequences of controlling behavior, extreme cultural pressures, and the vulnerabilities faced by young women who dared to challenge unfair expectations. Her story, though tragic, laid the groundwork for what would eventually become a landmark case in the United Kingdom, raising public awareness about honor killings, forced marriages, and the urgent need to protect vulnerable women.
After Shafilea Ahmed's disappearance, the investigation in Warrington began to intensify. Police were determined to uncover the truth, but the case was far from simple. At first, her parents claimed she had run away or chosen to leave the family voluntarily. They portrayed her as rebellious and disobedient, a young girl who had defied her family's authority. Many initially believed them, as Shafilea had often argued with her parents over school, friends, and her ambitions. But investigators sensed that something far more sinister was at play. Officers began collecting evidence around the Ahmed household. They spoke with neighbors, teachers, and friends to reconstruct Shafilea's final days. Patterns began to emerge. Shafilea had been fearful of her parents, particularly over the pressure to accept an arranged marriage. Friends recalled overhearing conversations where she had expressed terror at the thought of being forced into a life she did not want. Her teachers described a bright student weighed down by anxiety, someone who feared the consequences of going against her parents' wishes. These accounts suggested that her disappearance was not voluntary. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered inconsistencies in her parents' statements. The timing of events, where they claimed she had been, and their recollection of her movements did not match with what friends and neighbors reported. CCTV footage and witness statements revealed that Shafilea had not left the neighborhood in a manner consistent with running away. The police began to suspect foul play, and the investigation shifted from a missing person inquiry to a suspected homicide case. The community, initially shocked, started coming forward with more information. Neighbors described heated arguments between Shafilea and her parents, including threats that seemed more serious than normal disciplinary measures. Some recalled seeing her locked in her room at odd hours, with no way to contact the outside world. Friends confirmed that she had planned to speak to social workers and seek help, indicating that she wanted to escape an oppressive environment. The urgency of the investigation grew. Authorities later discovered that Shafilea's parents had meticulously planned to conceal their actions. Evidence suggested that the girl had been killed at home, and her body transported to a remote location to hide the crime. Detectives collected forensic evidence, including soil samples, traces of personal belongings, and witness testimonies that began pointing directly to the parents' involvement. The horrifying realization was that this was not a spontaneous act of anger, but a calculated attempt to silence a young woman who dared to defy parental control.
Public attention to the case escalated. Local news outlets reported on the ongoing investigation, highlighting Shafilea's struggles and the cultural pressures that had contributed to her vulnerability. Advocacy groups spoke about the dangers of honor-based violence, bringing national attention to a form of abuse that often remained hidden behind closed doors. Shafilea's story became a symbol, shining a light on the urgent need to protect young women in similar circumstances. By mid-2004, enough evidence had been gathered to formally charge Shafilea's parents. The arrest was a shock to the community. People struggled to comprehend that a young, bright girl could be murdered by her own family over the issue of control and honor. For law enforcement, the case required careful handling. Cultural sensitivities, media scrutiny, and the high-profile nature of the crime meant that every step had to be methodically documented and presented. The trial that followed revealed the horrifying details of Shafilea's final days. Witnesses recounted how she had pleaded for understanding, how she had tried to reach out for help, and how fear had dominated her life in the months leading up to her death. Forensic experts presented evidence of the calculated nature of the crime, demonstrating that her murder was premeditated and meticulously carried out. The prosecution painted a picture of a girl whose only crime was wanting freedom and self-determination. Throughout the trial, Shafilea's parents maintained a facade of innocence. They attempted to blame circumstances and claimed that they had acted out of frustration. However, the overwhelming evidence, witness testimonies, forensic findings, and inconsistencies in their accounts left little room for doubt. The court proceedings highlighted not only the tragic loss of Shafelea's life but also the broader issue of honor-based violence and the extreme consequences of controlling familial authority. The trial was emotionally taxing for Shafelea's friends and remaining family. Every day, the courtroom recounted the suffering, fear, and silence that Shafilea had endured. Yet, amidst the grief, there was a sense of hope, the possibility that justice would finally be served. Advocates argued that the case could set a precedent, sending a clear message that murder in the name of honor or control would not be tolerated under British law.
By the conclusion of the trial, the judge and jury had carefully considered the evidence. The court recognized the calculated and brutal nature of Shafilea Ahmed's murder. Her parents were convicted, bringing some measure of justice to a case that had caused national outrage. While nothing could undo the suffering or bring Shafilea back, the conviction served as a statement. Society would not allow fear and control to take the life of a young woman seeking freedom. Shafilea Ahmed's story, though tragic, became more than just a criminal case. It sparked conversations about parental control, cultural pressures, honor-based violence, and the right of young women to make decisions about their own lives. Her name became a rallying point for advocacy, awareness, and education, ensuring that the lessons of her life and her death would resonate for years to come.
After the conviction of Shafilea Ahmed's parents, her story did not end with the courtroom. Though justice had been served, her life and tragic death continued to resonate across the United Kingdom and beyond. For many, Shafilea became a symbol, a reminder of the dangers young women can face when cultural expectations, family pressure, and controlling authority collide. Her family, friends, and community struggled to cope with the loss. For Shafelea's friends, every conversation was a mixture of grief and remembrance. They spoke about her intelligence, humor, and the dreams she had yet to achieve. Teachers and mentors described her as bright, creative, and ambitious, a young woman who wanted to make a difference in the world. Her absence left a void not only in the lives of those who loved her, but also in the wider community that had followed her case. In the years following the trial, Shafelea's story inspired significant public awareness campaigns. Charities, advocacy groups, and social workers used her case to educate communities about honor-based violence and forced marriages. Workshops were held in schools and universities, helping young women recognize abusive patterns and understand that they had the right to make their own choices. Her story encouraged girls to speak up, to trust their instincts, and to seek help if they felt unsafe at home. Shafilea Ahmed became a voice for those who could not speak. Media coverage and documentaries highlighted the warning signs she had experienced: isolation, fear, and threats, and emphasized how communities and authorities could intervene before tragedy occurred. Her story also sparked conversations among policymakers, who began considering stricter measures to protect vulnerable individuals from family-imposed violence. In this way, Shafelea's life, though tragically cut short, contributed to a movement for systemic change. Her parents' conviction was a critical moment for legal precedent in the United Kingdom. The case demonstrated that cultural justification would not be tolerated when it came to crimes against children or young adults. Judges and lawmakers referenced Shafelea's case in later discussions about honor-based violence, forced marriage, and domestic abuse. Her story became a benchmark for understanding the subtle but devastating ways family control can escalate into extreme violence. Shafelea's friends also worked tirelessly to preserve her memory. They established small advocacy projects, attended speaking engagements, and shared her story online to reach younger generations. Social media became a tool to highlight her life, not just her death, allowing her voice to continue to inspire. Through this, Shafelea's name became associated with courage and awareness, a symbol for girls striving to live freely despite societal or familial pressure.
Internationally, her story drew attention to similar cases in other countries. Experts and journalists discussed how forced marriages and honor-related violence were not confined to any one culture or nation. Shafilea Ahmed's case became a reference point in academic studies, news articles, and policy papers. She represented the broader struggle of young women worldwide who face abuse under the guise of tradition, culture, or family honor. Despite the global attention, the most significant impact was local. Communities in Warrington and surrounding areas began actively looking for ways to protect young women at risk. Schools implemented programs to educate students about personal safety and the importance of reporting abuse. Local councils coordinated with law enforcement to monitor high-risk situations. Shafilea's case became a wake-up call, a tragic reminder that vigilance, intervention, and education could save lives. Her family, though forever grieving, dedicated themselves to raising awareness. They spoke at conferences, supported victims of domestic and honor-based violence, and worked to ensure that Shafilea's story was never forgotten. Her name became a symbol not just of tragedy, but of empowerment, change, and advocacy. Shafilea Ahmed's story reminds the world that freedom, safety, and autonomy are not privileges, they are rights. Her life, though tragically ended, continues to educate, warn, and inspire. Young women across the UK and internationally hear her story and recognize that courage is not just about fighting for oneself in moments of fear but also about speaking up, seeking help, and believing that justice can prevail. Her legacy is enduring. Schools, charities, and communities still reference her story as a cautionary tale and as motivation to prevent honor-based violence. The awareness campaigns sparked by her case have helped countless young women understand their rights and the resources available to protect them. Through these efforts, Shafilea Ahmed's life continues to have meaning far beyond the tragedy of her death. Though she never lived to see her dreams fulfilled, Shafilea's story endures, a testament to resilience, awareness, and the importance of justice. Her life serves as a powerful reminder that young women deserve safety, independence, and the chance to live without fear. The world may have failed her once, but her story ensures that it will not fail others in silence.